The Stranger Things podcast, episode number 4, The Body.
Boys? Hey. Assembly's about to start.
We know. We're just,
upset.
Yeah, definitely upset.
And we needed some alone time.
So, cry.
Listen, I get it. I do. I know how hard this is. But let's just be there for Will, huh? And then the Heath kid is all yours for the rest of the day. What do you say? Well, I don't believe we've met. What's your name?
11.
Eleanor.
She's my,
Cousin.
Second cousin.
she's here for Will's funeral.
Well, welcome to Hawkins Middle, Eleanor. I wish you were here under better circumstances.
Thank you.
Where are you from, exactly?
Bad place.
Sweden.
I have a lot of Swedish family.
She hates it there.
Cold.
Sub-zero.
Shall we?
Yep.
Well, greetings and salutations. Welcome back, or welcome to, if it's your first time, to the Stranger Things podcast. I'm Darrell.
And I'm Addi.
How are you?
Good.
Are you excited to be talking about episode 4?
It's my favorite.
It is, huh? You mentioned, when we wrapped up our 3rd episode, that this was going to be the one that was like a landmark episode for you as among your favorites.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if it's my favorite episode, but it has my favorite scene in it, which I'll definitely mention whenever we get there.
I'm a little proud of myself because my first watch, which I watched probably an hour after we wrapped up recording episode 3.
Which was yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, for us it was a week ago. Let's see. This episode is actually being released on July 12th.
Oh, we're recording it on the 25th, though.
We're recording 25th of June. It'll release on July 12th. We just recorded episode 3 yesterday for us, and then I pretty much immediately watched episode 4. And when it got to this scene, I stopped it, and I'm like, this has got to be it. And I called you in here, and I was right. So I was kind of proud of myself for knowing you well enough to know instantly what your favorite scene was.
Yeah, I just love it so much.
Well, we'll be talking about that and a few other things along the way. And if this is your first time joining us, thank you for hitting that play button and tuning into today's episode, as it were. And if it's not your first time, thanks for coming back. Thanks for enjoying it last time enough to come back. We're glad you enjoyed it enough.
It's because I'm here.
I'm sure it is. So today we're talking about the 4th episode, or chapter 4 of Stranger Things, entitled The Body. Addi, who wrote and directed this episode?
It's written by Justin Doble and directed by Sean Levy.
Again, just to kind of give you a rundown of how our episodes work, we're going to start with...
You didn't question me.
Oh, you're right. Thank you for remembering.
You better leave that part in.
Yeah. Who are Justin and Sean?
They are people who have written and directed Stranger Things.
And how are they connected to each other?
They've both worked with Stranger Things.
That works. Very good. Once again, you pass.
Thanks, bro.
Well, if this is your first time joining us, or just as a reminder for those of you returning, our episode format is we're going to start with an episode recap, and then we're going to spend the majority of our time just kind of going back and forth discussing the episode. I have only seen to this point in the series. I have not seen episode 5 or anything beyond that. And Addison has seen the entire series. So
it's pretty lit.
She's, in fact, multiple times. In fact, we recorded episode 3 yesterday, June 24th. Was it Friday or Saturday? Was it the 23rd or 24th? You literally watched the entire series in a day. Well, not technically. You started with chapter 4.
I started with 3, and I watched 3 through 8, and then I went back and watched 1 and half of 2.
Yeah.
And then I watched the second half like the next morning.
Yeah, you had to go to bed. We made you go to bed before you finished. So, but you basically watched the entire season in one day.
I mean, I have watched the entire season one day before.
Yeah, but so you've seen it multiple times. I have not. So you're kind of restricted on what you can talk about because you don't want to spoil me or anyone else who's in my position, which is a hard spot for you to be in. Mm-hmm. And I'm able to just openly talk freely. So that means I do like 75% of the talking, which I personally think is a bad thing, a bad mix. I'd like to get you more in the mix, but that's the way it is for right now. So we'll do the episode discussion there. And then after that, we will move into our listener feedback section, which we call Notes from the Upside Down. And then we'll do the quote of the week, which is a section that Addi takes care of every week. Then we'll do some predictions. And I think it's interesting. I've got a really interesting prediction for this week. Your mom, after I told her about it last night, I wrote it down. She came in right as I was finishing watching episode 4 for the first time. And I told her about it. She's like, wow, you think about this show way more deep than I did. I just watch it and enjoy it. So it's either completely ridiculous. Maybe it's good. I don't know. You guys can be the judge of that. And then we'll talk about some news and rumors. We do have some news this week, so that's good. And then we'll wrap it up with Addison's favorite segment, the meme of the week.
The meme of the week.
All right. Let's get it kicked off with our episode recap. And just as a reminder, this script that I'm reading in this recap is coming from the great folks over at the Fan Wiki. So go check that out. It's a great resource for all things Stranger Things. You can find that at strangerthings.wikia.com. And thanks to the great contributors over there for putting this together. Chief Hopper tries to convince Joyce the visions she's having of communicating with Will and the monster are all in her head as her way of grieving. However, Joyce knows that she's not crazy and wants Hopper to believe that Will is not dead. In Mike's basement, Elle proves that Will is still alive by channeling him through Mike's walkie-talkie. Mike hears him singing, "Should I stay or should I go?" And after further discussion, the boys decide to take Elle to school so that she can use Mr. Clark's Heath kit to make further contact. Despite the body being confirmed as Will, Joyce still doesn't believe that he's dead. Hopper is surprised to hear that state officials performed the autopsy on the body rather than Gary. Joyce asks to see the birthmark on Will's body and storms out, convinced that the body she saw wasn't Will's. Meanwhile, Jonathan is ready to plan Will's funeral, which gets him into an argument with Joyce. The two argue about if Will is really dead, causing them both to storm off. At the Wheeler house, Mike and the boys give Elle a makeover, dressing her in Nancy's pink dress and a blonde wig, while Mike does her makeup. Elle comes out of the bathroom, and Mike says she looks pretty. Good. At school, Mr. Clark agrees to let them use the radio as long as they attend an assembly commemorating Will's death. Overhearing bully Troy and his friend laughing about Will's death, Mike confronts them and punches Troy. Before Troy can attack, Elle causes Troy to freeze in place and urinate on himself. In the Hawkins laboratory, one of Brenner's workers attached to a security line goes through the gate to the alternate dimension. The worker reaches the other side, but the monster seemingly finds him and cuts the worker off from the security line. Brenner's crew was not able to reel him back in time. Jonathan is picking out a coffin for Will's body when Nancy arrives to ask him about the photo he took of Barb. Nancy describes the monster in the photograph as the same one she saw running through the forest. Jonathan realizes Nancy is describing the same monster Joyce saw crawling out of the wall, leading him to question if his mom really is telling the truth. Back at the school, Elle uses her powers to try to talk to Will through the ham radio. A flashback is shown where Elle uses her powers to locate one of Brenner's men, repeating what he said over the lab's speakers. Elle is able to make contact with Will, and the other boys hear him calling for his mom. Joyce suddenly hears Will's cries as well through the wall in her home. At the police station, Hopper questions Gary about the autopsy. He tells Hopper about the state police claiming jurisdiction, which he thinks is odd considering Will is just a regular small-town boy. Suspicious, Hopper locates the officer who found Will's body at a bar. His suspicions are confirmed when he forces the officer to confess about saying the body was Will. Hopper sneaks in to see the body and performs an autopsy of his own. He cuts open the body cavity and realizes the body is packed with what appears to be some sort of stuffing. Joyce tears down the wallpaper and sees Will in the alternate dimension. Elle and the boys are able to hear Joyce and Will's conversation through the radio. The radio catches on fire before they can make further contact. Joyce is still talking to Will, and she tells Will to hide as the monster is coming back for him. Joyce takes an axe to the wall to get Will. She breaks a hole in the wall, only revealing The front porch. All right, Addi, you know what that means?
Is it time for the episode discussion?
That's exactly what it means. All right, Addi, let's start from the beginning.
All right.
And pretty much picks up where last week or last episode left off. A little bit has happened. When we last saw Joyce and Jonathan, they were in the middle of the road hugging, and the cops were coming towards their house. And we saw their lights. And so now they've actually all made it back to the house. Hopper and some of the deputies are exploring the house, trying to find what Joyce has described to them, the walls and all that stuff. And we see Hopper delivering the news to Joyce that they found Will's body.
So whenever Hopper is talking to Joyce and explaining that, her son's dead and stuff, and they found his body, it sounds like he's kind of far away, or it's like underwater. Like you can tell she's like tuning him out and not really understanding or listening to him.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly why I think that's what they were trying to convey. It's pretty cool how they did that, though. Mm-hmm. I like it.
And even after he says, "Do you understand what I'm saying?" and she says, "No, I don't understand." So, yeah, I think it just kind of goes together perfectly. Yeah. I mean, the entire show is just perfect, but like,
yeah, it's a good scene. There's a lot of this opening sequence at the house. There's so much to love. This is among my favorite openings that we've seen so far. Granted, there's only been 4. But for completely different reasons than any other opening that we've had. So she insists that it's not Will. I don't know what you found. It's not Will. She tells Hopper that she was just talking with him like 30 minutes before, which is one of the concerns I had. When I was like, the timing just doesn't add up here. And she's kind of saying the same thing. I was just talking with him 30 minutes ago. He tries to comfort her with his own grief story about when he lost his daughter. And she's like, yeah, what you're talking about is grief. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm not grieving. My son's not dead. Essentially, I'm kind of ad-libbing, obviously. And then he gets into his truck and he starts to leave. And then he changes his mind, turns the truck off, kicks back, puts his hat over his head. So he's going to stay the night in his truck. He's just going to kind of watch over them.
I didn't really notice that. I noticed he turned his car off, but I thought he like went back inside or something.
No, he kind of leans back. And then he takes his hat off and covers his eyes, which is what you do when you're going to sleep. You see this a lot in Westerns. Mm-hmm. The cowboy will take his hat off and put it over his eyes. I don't understand how that's
comfortable at all.
I don't find it comfortable. I've tried it a few times, not with a cowboy hat. I don't know the last time I wore a cowboy hat. Probably when I was a kid and my dad made me wear one. But with any kind of cap, I don't find it comfortable. But it does shield your eyes from distractions, make it darker or whatever. But that shows a lot about the character of Hopper, where he's just, the life of a police officer, especially in a small town like that, the lines are blurred on where your duties end. Pastors are the same way. Teachers are the same way. You have these jobs where you're always on, and she still needs him, even though he's delivered the news, and there's nothing more he can really do for her. She's got to fight this battle, this mental battle that she's going through. But he just decided he wasn't going to leave her there. And even though Jonathan's there, Jonathan's dealing with it in his own way. He's in his room with music. Music was something he shared with Will, something he's very passionate about. And he's crying. And so anyway, I just love this scene. I kind of loved what it showed us about each of the characters. And then with Joyce, she sits there on the couch and then boom, she's like, She goes to the shed. She gets the axe. And now she's ready. She's like, you can just tell by her demeanor, she's just like thinking, come on, faceless monster.
Fight me.
Come at me, bro. Yeah. So
come at me, bro.
I just, this scene, after the dialogue stops, I think it reveals more about these characters and shows us multiple layers about these characters. And I loved it. I loved it for that. So to me, it was a really great opening sequence. So back at the Wazowski's house.
The Wheelers.
That's what I said. Mike is down in the basement. It's still, doesn't it his parents are oblivious that this girl has been living in their basement for how many days now? And it's not like they're quiet. Like originally they were, but he's like yelling at her in this scene.
I know.
And they're still oblivious.
Just all TV shows like whenever they need to be loud or whenever they need to be quiet, they always seem way too loud. Like if they're hiding from someone, they're always like yelling at each other.
Yeah.
But like that could just be since they're so close, they're actually, you know, whispering or something. But I don't know, just like any TV show, I always notice that they're being way too loud for their situation.
Yeah, definitely. But the parents don't notice. Mike is obviously upset, has every right to be. I mean, from his perspective, she's just, what has she done? Has she lied to them? Has she deceived them? I mean, deception kind of implies that she did it intentionally. His friend is dead and he's lashing out at her, right? And she's playing with the walkie-talkie. It's staticky. It's irritating him. But then she tunes into that song that we've heard Will and his brother, the Should I Stay or Should I Go song. Mm-hmm. Will instantly recognizes it and recognizes the significance, and it's Will singing the song. So huge
you
moment.
called Mike Will.
Oh, did I? Sorry.
You said Will recognizes the significance.
Oh, Mike, thank you for catching that. I'll do that. I do that all the time.
Yeah, you did it in Walmart the other day, and I almost slapped you across the face.
Thanks for not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, there were people around. You can't get away with murder if there's witnesses. That should be the quote of the week.
Help me. Well, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts you want to share on that scene? I know you shared a little bit already on the basement scene. Anything else?
Well, I kind of see his point, but he should know that she knows what she's talking about. Like, she's smart. She has powers way beyond he could ever do. So I think he needs to trust her. I mean, I understand why he would be mad, though. Like, sure. I think it's just mostly the emotions of seeing his friend dead. And yeah, I think he's more upset about that and not really at 11. And he just kind of needs someone to blame. You know what I mean? Yeah. No, that makes total sense. And I think he's obviously very emotional and doesn't fully understand how to. I mean, that's why, like the walkie-talkie static. I mean, that probably wouldn't have irritated him, except that his emotions were so raw at the time. Mm-hmm. So I think you're right. So speaking of raw emotions, we go to the morgue. We're not talking about every single scene here, and sometimes I've combined scenes just to kind of streamline our conversation a little bit. But so we learn a few things about the morgue in a couple of different scenes. First, we learn that the state officials insisted that they handle the body, that they do the autopsy. And they kicked out Gary. Yeah, he was sent home, which is very interesting. Gary later tells Hopper that he thought it was very peculiar. He's like, we're dealing with Will Byers here. We're not talking about, John F. Kennedy. So it seemed odd to him that there would be all these people handling the body and that they would be from the state and they would kick everybody else out. Very, very suspicious. And of course, we're going to find out why, but not yet. Couple things here. Jonathan and Joyce go to view the body. They didn't let them in the room. That was a red flag to me. Do they usually let people in the room? I've thankfully, never had to go identify a body, nor do I know anyone that has. But anytime I've seen it conveyed on TV or a movie, you go to the side of the gurney or wherever the body is. You're allowed to go up to it to identify it. So I don't know, but my experience is all through TV. So you would think that they would stick at least with TV stereotypes. Well, it was the 80s, so maybe it was different. Yeah, perhaps. But I think it was just another clue that something's not right here. If they're not letting the mother go to her son, that's a problem. But at the very least, Joyce is smart, and she's refusing to believe that this is Will. And the scene cuts a little short. So Jonathan gets sick at the side of the body and he runs away. Now it's just Joyce, and she says he's got a birthmark on his right arm, and we see the morgue attendant raise the arm, but the camera cuts away before we see her reaction. The next time we see Joyce, she is barreling out of there, going on the sidewalk, and
insisting that I don't know what that is in there, but that is not my son, is what she says, or something to that effect. So I'm led to believe that the birthmark was not there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Or if the birthmark was
like
there,
different place.
Eventually, she asked enough questions on identifying features where she's convinced that's not him. So maybe it was the birthmark or whatever it was. The body failed to produce the evidence needed to convince her it was her son. Right? That's clear.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was really interesting, because when Joyce and Jonathan have their confrontation out there on the sidewalk, and he's like, Mom, you got to stop with the lights and the wall. We've got to do this. We've got to bury Will. And she's like, no, that's not my son. You go take care of your funeral. I'm not having anything to do with that. That was her chance to say whatever it was. Hey, it's not Will because the birthmark wasn't there, or whatever it was. You know what I mean? Like, why would she not tell him that?
Yeah, I didn't really realize that until you said something, but yeah, that would have been a really good point.
Yeah. I mean, TV shows and movies are famous for, leaving out information for the sake of convenience. Two characters don't communicate, like Lost was this way. If people would have just said, hey, guess what I ran into in the jungle today? Or guess what conversation I just had? They would have figured things out a lot faster and probably even gotten off that island. So, but that's the way TV shows work for drama purposes. But even still, this doesn't make sense why she wouldn't, because he's railing on her for not wanting to bury her son. You would think the first thing she would say is, well, let me tell you why I don't want to bury my son. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It was just really odd to me that she wouldn't tell him that information, but she didn't. So it's a moot point, but I just thought it was peculiar. Okay, let's talk about Nancy and Steve.
Hate Steve.
That's why I paused. I wanted to get your reaction on that. We had a family discussion yesterday about how much all of us hate Steve.
True.
That was quite fun. Although I don't know if Colby joined in. I know me, you, and your mom did.
Yeah, we all hate him.
Okay, Steve has never endeared himself to us, right? From day one, he's not really been a likable character. He's always come across as the playboy jerk, just trying to get girls, right? And there's nothing likable about that. But in this scene,
he ruined Domino's. I mean, I didn't like Domino's to begin with. Like, every other pizza place is better, but
I actually like Domino's since they redid their recipes a couple years ago.
Maybe that's why, since they changed it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I don't like it. Because did we have it before that?
No, I hated it before then. Like, I got it in college and it was crap. So I
Little Caesar's the best.
Oh my gosh. Let's move on from that disgusting conversation. So Barb and Steve and Nancy are in the alley, and all he cares about is his dad not finding out there was beer. He doesn't care and what the cops are going to say, right? He doesn't care anything about Barb.
I know. I wanted to punch him in the face for like the third time in this episode.
Right. Yeah. Every time he opened his mouth, you wanted to just punch him in the face.
Every time I saw him on screen for even half a second, I wanted to punch him in the face.
Yeah, just a total. My hope is that Nancy is finally starting to see the light of just how shallow this guy is. And I mean, you and I talked a little bit about it, although that may have been off microphone when you and I were talking about, like, when she got ready to leave that night. He wouldn't even like... Yeah,
I remember talking about that in his last episode.
Yeah, but I don't know if it was like...
I think you recorded it, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, that should have been her first... I mean, there were many signs before this, but he's just no good. I hope she's finally waking up to it. She's so much better than... He doesn't deserve her, but I hope she wakes up. Let's talk about... Mike decides it's time to call Lucas and for him to grab Dustin and come over because he needs to tell them about what he heard on the walkie-talkie. And they get there and they decide they need more power. And so they're going to take her to the school. But
first, they have to give her a makeover. And this is my favorite scene.
That's right.
And basically the entire season, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, there are a couple scenes in later episodes that I like, but I think this one's the top. I love the music, and I I love everything about it. Like they're all so nice to her. Even Lucas, he's like, "Oh, I found this dress," and whenever Dustin puts on the wig, he's like, "Hey, look at this." And he's like, "Wow, she looks," and Mike's like, "Pretty." Wait, why did I say that? Good, you look pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that part. And the music there, I don't even have to look this up. I've listened to this so many times today. It's called Kids 2. And yeah, I love that song. It's like, it's that song, this theme song, and then just Kids, the first one, which is played whenever you first see Will, Lucas, Dustin, and Mike playing D&D in the second scene of the first episode.
Very cool.
I know too much about the music.
No, I sincerely love that you are digging into things like the music and the writers and stuff like that. I mean, most people don't go to that level, and they might stop with the actors, but there's so many more people that go into creating this show. If you didn't have the music, it could be the exact same thing with a different piece of music behind it, and it would not give you the same satisfaction and emotion, right? Or it could have been directed in a different way, or a different line could have been inserted in the writing process. And then you just talk about all the people on set that are holding lights and putting people in their marks and creating wardrobe, all those things that you saw that you're talking about in this episode. They could have hired
different actors.
Yeah.
Could you imagine that? Ew.
No. So I love that you're appreciating some of the sub-levels beyond the main actors that are going into creating this show that you love so much. So thumbs up, gold star for you.
Thanks. I'm an inch taller than Finn Wolfhard, who plays Mike.
I don't know. I saw a picture of him on Instagram today. Dude has grown. In fact, Lucas, what's his name?
Caleb McLaughlin, something like that. I'm not really sure how to pronounce his last name.
He's grown a lot.
He's 4'8".
Not anymore, he's not.
If you check Google.
Google's out of date, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it says he's 5'4" and I'm 5'5".
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think that's out of date. Either they were short, obviously they were shorter in season 1. They've grown since season 1. There's no question of that, right? So, I don't know.
You can definitely
I don't know if that number you're giving is based off of how current that is. That's all I'm saying. They've definitely grown since season 1, all of them.
Okay, well, they should update it right now, because...
and maybe it's accurate. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
I doubt he's grown an inch, though, since...
What?
What?
Why wouldn't he have?
I don't know, because doesn't it take like a year for you to grow like an inch?
Not at that age.
Oh, well, we're the same age.
Well, but boys' growing cycles are later than girls. You're almost fully grown.
Is that why Colby's so small?
Yeah, Colby, this time next year, he's going to be towering over you.
No, he's not.
Yeah, he is.
No, he's not.
All right. So let's talk about the lab. So at the lab, again, I'm combining multiple scenes here. Oh, this is one where I actually yelled out loud when I watched it last night. You weren't in bed yet, because I pretty much called it perfectly in our last episode, where I said, I think that's a winch, and I think this is what they're going to do with it.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
You were like, oh.
So anyway, just patting myself on the back, because I'm not very good at guessing things. I really am not. I got maybe a 50-50 track record at guessing things. So when I get one right, I like to give myself a pat on the back. Maybe that's narcissistic of me, and I'm sorry if it offends you, but it's true. But we learned some really important things in this scene. It doesn't go well for the guy that goes across.
Shepherd. He
calls it a rift. I called it a crack before. It's obviously much bigger. Now, this is the best we've had it. It's much bigger than a crack. Rift is a great word for it. Hole in the wall. I don't know. The quote says, the Shepherd is what you said the guy's name was?
Yeah.
He says, I'm about 1 point south of the rift. Everything's still here, but it's all eroded. Now, that I don't know what that means. Like, what does he mean by everything's still here? If it's still here, that implies it's been there before. And if it's been there before, that implies they know that it's been there before, because otherwise you wouldn't say it's still here, right? So I'm just really intrigued by that. Like, is that a big clue that they've crossed over through the rift or through that other portal dimension, whatever it is, before? because if you pair that clue with something that Will tells Joyce later on, Will says, quote, "It's like home, but it's so dark and empty." And I think he also says it's cold. So I look at these two things as both giving us the same clue, and that is where they're at is like where we are. We are meaning the main characters, the world that we see. Again, pointing to a parallel universe or a reflective world or something like that I've talked to. And again, I get those ideas strongly probably because of the phrase upside down that I'm aware of only by name, not in any, it hasn't been revealed to me yet. I don't know what upside down is, but I can kind of draw my own conclusions, I think. So anyway, thought that was pretty interesting. What did you think of this scene?
So whenever Shepard, whenever he is about to go into the, crack in the wall or whatever, Dr. Brenner says, "Good luck out there, son," or something like that. So I have two theories on this.
Okay.
Either that's his actual son, well, duh, or he was like another test subject, because you know how 11 calls Dr. Brenner Papa?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he was a test subject and he just thinks that he's his dad, or maybe he's just like an old man, just good luck out there, son. Like, old people called younger people's son and stuff.
Yeah, and it could be, you could be right on any of those. I took it more along what you said lastly. Sometimes someone in authority, even like a corporate boss, might refer to one of the underlings as son. It's a little bit demeaning, I'm reminding you of our position of authority here, son. Mm-hmm. But it can be kind of comforting because there's a relationship there. So, but that doesn't mean there's any actual physical relationship or anything like that. So I would go with your third theory, but it could be any of those. You're right.
Well, okay. Whenever Mike stays home and he locks 11 in the closet for a couple minutes, you have this flashback from her, and she's yelling at Dr. Brenner. She's like, "Papa, Papa." Like, she's clearly asking for help.
Yeah.
And he doesn't care at all. But whenever Shepard doesn't come back out, and there's blood all over that metal thing, he actually looks sad. And
yeah, you're
whenever
right.
Whenever he wasn't responding at first, he looked sad then too. So maybe he actually cares about this one.
Oh, Addison, you've just set up a perfect segue. Those are great insights, by the way. Fantastic. The next thing in our notes is to talk about the school. So we get to the school, we see Nancy in class. She's in probably her lit class.
Lit.
And do you know what the teacher is reading?
Heart of Darkness?
Yeah. You looked at the notes. Did you know that before? Did you picked up on that at all or anything?
I know he was reading something, and I could have looked it up if I wanted to, but I didn't. So
I'm hoping one of our literature buffs, Karen, I'm talking about you, Emily, anyone else out there who's listening who is a literature buff, I would love your thoughts on this. This is significant. This is another important piece. I won't put it up there on par with the X-Men comic clue that was in episode 1, but this is an important piece. So I did a little bit of research. I've actually got it pulled up. I'm going to read it at some point because it's only like 30,000 words. Like, you could read it in like an hour or two. It's a short novel from the turn of the last century, like 1902, I think it was published, although maybe late 1890s. I didn't research it that in depth. It was first published as 3 short stories in a magazine, and it tells the story of the Congo, I believe, in Africa. But the premise, as I understand it, and I've done very little research on this, is that it's easy for us to, in this case, look at Brenner and see him as an evil dude.
You want to punch him in the face, just like Steve. Just
like Steve, right? And maybe even Steve, right? And it maybe even the Demogorgon. These are these especially when we watch things or we observe things, whether it's a TV screen or real life, we like to assign morality to things. The Bible talks about this in a way where Jesus says, you're talking about the the speck in your brother's eye and you've got a log in your own. And that is to say that we all have faults, and it's easy for us to point out the faults and assign morality to other people while completely failing to recognize those same faults and failings in ourselves, or putting ourselves in context with that other person and recognizing that if we were that person that had been put in that same situation, if we had walked their path in their shoes the way they had, who's to say we wouldn't be just like them and made those same decisions, right? And so you talk about Brenner having some compassion here. It's a sign that he's not all evil. And no one is ever straight black and straight white. There are complexities and nuances to them and to their characters. None of us are purely evil. None of us are purely good. And I think that's what the Heart of Darkness is trying to help people understand, that we don't need to get on our high horse or our morality choo-choo train and say, toot, toot, I'm the best. You know, it's
everyone at my school other than me.
Yeah. And even with Steve, if you had Steve's hair and Steve's looks and Steve's money,
I'd jump off a
and
cliff.
Steve's opportunity, who's to say that you wouldn't be just like Steve? Right?
I'd jump off a cliff.
So anyway, I think, and I love that this piece has been put into the show at this point. Because at this point, we're really starting to pick sides. You and I already spent time talking about how much we hate Steve. We've established who we're rooting for here, right? But the fact is that it's not that easy. We may, by the time this is over, end up sympathizing with Brenner, even maybe sympathizing with the Demogorgon, and still hating Steve. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, as someone who's already finished the season, I can conclude I still hate Steve.
I love you. Yeah, and I'm not asking you to share your opinions on how you feel about those characters with the season's perspective. I'm more asking, what do you think about the ideas that this story, Heart of Darkness, is laying out, and you know, the way that we try to assign labels to people.
It's cool. Good story. Something you should go by, but not gonna do.
Oh, okay then.
I will keep judging Steve until the day I die.
Okay. All right. Well, so Nancy's taken out to talk to the police, and then, you know, we don't need to go into all of that. I mean, she tells them mostly the truth. Her mom calls her out for lying. She goes to her room and she notices something in Jonathan's story. And I like it that these clues are starting to come together. People are starting to talk together.
You mean
photo? Yeah, thank you. And so she goes to Jonathan and she asks him about it. And so they go back to the dark room. You know, when I was telling you about the dark room last week, I told you about how you could expose it longer, you could leave it in the chemical longer or shorter to change how dark and light it was. And so we see him making those decisions this time to alter the contrast of the photo. And by doing that, they're able to get a better look at the monster.
How'd they make it bigger though?
Well, you can blow it up again. With the focus, like a microscope and stuff. You can zoom in, zoom out, and focus, change the focal point and stuff like that. Yeah, totally.
Oh, the picture was like ripped up and stuff, and she didn't do a very good job of taping it together.
She did a terrible job. Like she'd never used tape before.
So, you know, part of like where it's ripped, it's like white at the top because it's like half the paper. Right. So she could have like tucked it underneath.
I know.
But okay.
My OCD was like having some major problems.
I was about to punch her in the face. But okay, wasn't there like one of those like tears in the middle of so the feet of the Demogorgon is like behind Barb, which is in like the bottom corner, and then the top part, it's in a different picture. So whenever they were together, there would have been a tear in the middle. And how did that like not show up?
Well, because he would have developed it afresh from the negative. Okay,
that makes sense. I was like really confused on that.
It
like,
didn't have anything to do with her ripped photo. They made a brand new one.
Yeah, I thought it was like they were like copying it. Like
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they were. Yeah, that's a good question. They were.
I was much confuzzled.
Yep. Okay. So the boys and 11 try to get into the AV room. What's the teacher's name?
Mr. Clark.
Yeah. He runs into them and they have to go to the school assembly. How awkward would that be? Oh, you're the best friends of the dead guy, and the dead guy is the reason we're having the assembly. And
You're not even in there.
but then you come in late and like everybody's looking at you. I would have been like Dustin, like abort.
Yeah, another reason why he's my favorite.
Yeah. Great scene though.
Yeah, it's
Or it
really
ended
fun.
well.
Yeah. So at the end of the assembly, this is like my fourth favorite scene in the whole series or season. It's when Troy and James, they were making fun of Will, or they were like laughing, and Mike is obviously like really mad about it, and he's like, hey, shouldn't be laughing about that. So he's like, okay, what are you gonna do about it? And he doesn't really care because, you know, Troy's the bully, not Mike. He just kind of laughs it off, and then he goes over and he pushes him, and every time I'm just like, oh, yes, you go, Mike. And he's like, oh, you're so dead, Wheeler. And he's like about to hit him or something like that, and he just stops. And
yeah, I mean, at first you didn't know if it was in the name of love or if it was hammer time or if he was going to collaborate and listen.
You make me cringe. Okay. So he freezes there. And I mean, we can all conclude why.
Right.
And then he starts peeing, and then the little blonde dude's like, dude, he peed. So then they're all just like laughing, and then the principal comes over and they're like, okay, what's going on here? And then they all take off running. And I love how 11 just exits. She just like wipes her nose like a boss and then turns around and leaves. Like, totally. I love that.
That was amazing. I don't know if she came up with that on her own, if Millie Bobby Brown did, or if that was the director who came up with that rollout, but it was awesome.
Yeah.
Made the scene.
On a scale of 1 to 10, it was an 11.
I see what you did there.
Thanks.
Nicely done. Yeah. Love that scene. Okay. So Hopper is getting a little suspicious. And he's been suspicious. Like, he's been a little bit more on point. We talked about this last episode, but we don't know exactly what caused him to go undercover or whatever it is. I mean, just other than his suspicions. So he tracks down the guy who is being interviewed by the news, and he's the state trooper that found the body. And so he goes and finds the guy in a bar and is just Joe Civilian talking to him and gets enough information out of him to know that he's lying. So follows him out to the back, and
he starts beating him up like a boss.
He did, yeah. And then you get the creepy guys watching in the car, and the guy getting beat up. Well, I don't remember his name, the state trooper guy, but he's like, you're going to get us both killed. They told me to call it in and not let anyone get close to the body. And then he looks over at the car and he says, you're going to get us both killed. And then he runs away. So really interesting. I think that guy is just a goon or a lackey. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know who put him up to it. He doesn't know who's in charge ultimately. That's still a mystery. You know, I'm a bit perplexed too. I want to say it still goes back to Brenner. You know, he's the one pulling the strings. He's the one with all the power. But it could be someone above Brenner too, which would again allow us to have more sympathy and understanding towards Brenner if he's not the top dog, if he's a puppet, if you will. But pretty interesting stuff anyway. With Hopper starting to see there is some deception going on here, and it's all leading back to, you know, Joyce isn't so crazy after all. I mean, she seems crazy. She says she talks to her son with Christmas lights. That's pretty crazy. And he's in the wall. That's pretty crazy. But Hopper and Jonathan and Nancy are all starting to understand that she's not crazy, and there's some pretty legitimate, strange things going on.
Really?
Yep. See what I did there?
Okay, whenever she destroys the wall, though,
yeah.
obviously the portal closed, or whatever, like the window thing was obviously closed because you could see it closing.
Normal wall, yeah.
Yeah. And then she goes and destroys her house anyway. And then, like, even whenever she saw, like, the least bit of light, wouldn't you stop? Like,
let's not, well, I was going to say, let's not try to figure out Joyce's decisions, but then I kind of called her out on not telling Jonathan earlier. So I guess I already did that.
And then, what if he was still there? She just, like, yeets him in the head with an axe.
Well, I'll tell you what. Okay, so this was a really cool scene that you're talking about here. It's when the boys and Elle they get into the AV club, and she channels Will, and at the same time Joyce is seeing Will. She hears him, she pulls back the wallpaper, and she can see Will. And this is the first time she's actually seen Will since he disappeared. So we're getting both views of this, which is really cool the way they cut this together.
Yeah.
Great job. To me, that's the time you grab the axe. You say, Will, stand back. And I'm going to take the axe and I'm going to chop this glass looking or whatever it is. She can see him. Why don't you go get the axe then and chop a hole in the wall and rescue your son? She's saying, run away, Will. No. Hang tight. I got an axe. I got this. I'm prepared for this.
Or stay right there. I'll just chop your head off. That's okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought this was one of those decisions where I was like, okay, writers, this is a little bit lazy because the obvious solution is right there. And she does the obvious thing 5 seconds later, chopping the hole in the wall when it makes no sense. When it made sense to chop the hole in the wall was when her son was still there.
Well, maybe it doesn't work like that. Maybe you can't just, cut it and there's no way to actually get through it. But
well, at least try.
Because, he put his hand up to it and, like, nothing happened, right? So
yeah, but an axe is stronger than a hand at breaking through things.
Good point. Well, I didn't mean, like, breaking through it. I meant just, like, walking through it. Like, like the dude in the lab did, Shepard. Because he just, like, walked through it.
Yeah, that's a different deal there. That's cool how, like, they broke through the tendrils and then they kind of, yeah. But it was a cool scene. I loved it. I loved watching the boys and Joyce interact with Will simultaneously from completely different locations. So that was pretty neat. Okay, ready to talk about the final scene?
Sure.
Amazing ending to this episode. Well, not the final scene, the penultimate scene, but it's again with Hopper. He goes back to the morgue, says he left his hat. The guard's there. He tries to pull one over on the guard. The guard's like, I don't answer to that. It was the guy that he had beat up earlier. Takes out the guard. How much courage would it take? Like, you're at that moment, you're looking over the dead body, and your instincts are telling you.
He felt it first.
I know, but he still had the hesitation. Like, when you get the knife out and you're going to maim a dead body, there's still that, like, he had that moment of hesitation, like, how much do I believe this? Am I really ready to commit? It's a, I don't know if it's a felony offense. It's a crime to mutilate a dead body like that. So,
ew.
Yeah, it was a big
I don't
choice.
remember this scene, like, at all.
Like the first time you watched it?
Yeah, I just don't remember it, like, after rewatching it, like, 1,000 times already. But, I remember, but I didn't remember it until a few days ago when I, like, rewatched it for, like, the 12th time.
That's interesting.
Probably because I thought it was scary and had my eyes closed because, dead bodies freak me out.
Okay. Because it's a significant, from my perspective, only having seen the 4th episode, I'm like, this is a huge deal. So I'm wondering if, like, it didn't stick in your mind because whatever happens from here on out kind of erased it. Like, it's
like, importance. I know what happens.
Yeah, so interesting. It's a huge deal, though. He cuts it open and stuffing comes out. So obviously not a real body. I
want to know how whoever made the fake body, I wonder how they knew exactly what he looked like.
Yeah, to that detail. Yeah. Which is, again, probably why they didn't let Joyce get right and Jonathan right up next to him.
Or anyone.
Yeah. Anyone that knew him personally.
Well, the dude that he was at the bar with said he wasn't allowed to have anyone.
That's true, yeah.
Which I'm wondering that because whatever Hopper touched the body, I'm wondering if he said that, or if he was told that because it felt different, because it's probably like, plastic or something.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he seemed to react like it felt like not a dead
he
body.
went like he touched it and he was like,
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, it's a good fake, but only if you haven't seen the real thing, and only from a distance, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, still an impressive fake though. But I feel good. I mean, that was one of my predictions last week. I was like, I don't know how, but the timing doesn't add up, and I'm going to say Will's not dead, even though I went back and double checked and the clothing matched. So I'm glad I was right on that, because I didn't want them to reveal yet. I mean, if I'm not glad I was right for the sake of being right. I'm glad I was right for the sake of the story. I felt like it would make a stronger story if Will was still alive. So that makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the very last scene is Hopper going to the lab with the wire cutters. And now he's breaking in. So now he's committing another crime, breaking into the lab.
He's a cop. He can't arrest himself, right?
No, but other people can. So,
well, not if he's head cop.
I told your mom this last night. We were talking about it, and I said, Hopper's. I'm glad he's doing this, but he's gonna find himself dead before the season's over if he's not careful. So, but I'm glad he's willing to keep pushing it to find the truth. The truth is out there.
He's good at talking to people to get information and getting what he wants.
He's a good cop.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Or concerned citizen.
That's right. Very nicely played.
Thank you.
All right. Any other thoughts on this ep?
Nope.
All right. Well, that's it from me as well. Let's move into notes from the Upside Down. All right. Well, we have 2 listener contributions for today's episode, and one of them from a brand new person.
So we have feedback from Jeff and Linda.
All right. Do you want to do Jeff first?
Well, he's on the list first, so.
Well, we can't break the list.
It's in alphabetical order.
All right. Here he is.
Transmissions from the Upside Down.
Hey, Darrell and Addi. This is Jeff, X-Force 11, with my feedback about Chapter 4, The Body. Well, we're halfway through the series, and they amped it up again this episode. We got to see how close to his mom Will is because of Elle bringing him closer. We got to see the sheriff see that there's much more afoot than he thought, and we got to see the guys starting to trust Elle. I really enjoyed this episode for the twist and the turns, and I cannot wait to hear what y'all have to say about it, because I'm excited for what comes next, and I know Addi is just anxious so that her dad knows what's going on with this series, because it's only getting better from here. Thanks. X-Force 11 out.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right. This next one's from Linda. Do you want to take it, or do you want me to take it?
I guess I'll read it.
Okay.
So Linda says, I am so excited to be watching this a second time, this time with friends. What I loved most about it was the pure nostalgia. I have been around for more than a few years and was a single mom of 3 in 1983. My girls were 17 and 15 and my son was 12. These were my kids. The teen angst of the girls and the D&D of a 12-year-old son. The girls were so different. One went to the underage drinking party, and one was Barb, and I couldn't understand all the weird things I had to get for the D&D game that seemed to go on forever. These were my kids.
That's great. It's like they were right out of the show.
I know many are thinking that these kids didn't have enough parental oversight. This was a totally different time. We didn't worry about ISIS or drug raids. We didn't lock our doors except at night. In the summer, the kids were outside from sunrise to sunset. They showed up for Kool-Aid and snacks, then lunch. They had to be home before dark. When Clay was about 2, the neighborhood kids would take him take him with them in a red wagon and deliver him many hours later, happy and unharmed. 1983, there were no seatbelts. If you wanted to go somewhere, you walked. Kids could charge on parents' accounts. This was smart for the stores, not so much for the parents. Phones were attached to walls or sat on tables. If Joyce had been renting her phone, she wouldn't have had to buy a new one. There were no answering machines. If the line was busy, you called back. If no one answered, you called back. No one knew that pajamas could catch fire. Riding in the back window of the car or the bed pickup was a treat. Bicycles. How E.T. could the show be? It gets even more E.T. as the show as it goes along. I love it. Addi, I love that you're podcasting with your dad. Being able to talk in public will make you an amazing anything you want to be. Which I do want to be an actress and singer when I grow up. So thank you, Linda.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. Linda's one of my favorite people. I get to see her when I go to Atlanta for Dragon Con, which would have been this year, but you and I got tickets for San Diego instead.
Yeah, that was the same thing. We were going to go there.
Yeah, San Diego's like impossible to get tickets. So we thought, well, we'll try for San Diego. And then when that doesn't work out, we'll go to Atlanta. And then we miraculously got tickets for San Diego, which we're thrilled about. But the thing that bums me is I won't get to see Linda and some of my other friends there.
Don't they film in Atlanta?
They filmed this show in Georgia. Yeah, they sure do. Well, cool. It's so good to hear from you, Linda. Thank you for writing in. We'd love to hear from you. That's right, you who've listened to this podcast and haven't sent in your feedback yet. We'd love to hear you. The way you can do that is by calling 304-837-2278 and leaving a voice message on our message system. Or you can go over to goldenspiralmedia.com/feedback, where you'll have a variety of ways. Send in an email like Linda did. You can attach an audio file like Jeff did, or you can even use our SpeakPipe widget. The only thing we ask is either make it general like Linda's feedback here, or make sure it's contained to a single episode of Stranger Things or anything that has happened prior to that single episode. So you can go ahead and send in feedback for any episode because the whole series is out there. But just we don't want to spoil anybody like me who hasn't seen the whole thing yet. So contain your feedback to say episode 6 and anything prior to that if you're sending in for feedback for episode 6. Hopefully that makes sense. And we'd love to have your feedback for a future episode. All right, Addi, if they want to follow us on social media, how do they do that?
Our Instagram is Stranger Things GSM. Our Twitter is Upside Down GSM. And our Facebook is facebook.com/group/Stranger Things GSM.
All right. You know what that means? It's time for Quote of the Week. Now, this quote of the week is a really good one. You gave me a signal earlier in our podcast, like you didn't want me to say too much while we were talking about the scene because you wanted to reserve it for the quote of the week. So tell us all about it.
So in the scene when Troy is peeing in front of the whole school, this little blonde kid says, "Dude, Troy peed himself." Don't know his name, but it's just like some extra person who says that. So yeah, that's the quote of the week. Dude, Troy peed himself.
Hey, Troy! You think this is funny?
Would you say, Wheeler?
I saw you guys laughing over there. And I think that's a real messed up thing to do.
Didn't you listen to the counselor, Wheeler? Grief shows itself in funny ways. Besides, what's there to be sad about anyway? Will's in fairyland now, right? Flying around with all the other little fairies, all happy and gay. La 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 la. You're dead, Wheeler. Dead! Dude, Troy peed himself.
That's such a funny scene.
I literally heard you laughing and I was like, what is so funny?
Yeah.
I totally forgot that was in this episode. So even though I watched it like 20 times. Once you watch all the episodes, they kind of just run together.
They do. Absolutely. They do. Yeah. I mean, I don't have that experience with this show, but with other episodes or other shows I do. So yeah, but it's a great scene. Everything about it. And we already talked about it. No need to rehash it, but yeah, love it. Good choice.
Thanks.
All right. Well, let's get into predictions. All right, now I kind of teased this earlier that I have one prediction this week. It might be crazy. It probably is, but here's what I've got. So stay with me. My prediction is that the Demogorgon is 11, but from the parallel universe or whatever we're going to call it. Let's call it a parallel universe just for the sake of simplicity. And I think this is probably my Fringe roots coming back to me on this, because Fringe had a lot of these types of...
Did you say French?
Fringe. I didn't pronounce it very well. Fringe had a lot of these scenarios that it would lay out there where if you were in a different world, very, very similar to this one, how would you be different? You know, what circumstances would be? Would you be just like you are? Or if you had made a different decision there than you did here, how would that have altered your path and that sort of thing? So kind of with that thought process in mind, my theory is that the Demogorgon is 11. And so when you think about what we've seen in flashback about Elle, we've seen Brenner kind of coaching her, kind of manipulating her, kind of leading her, teaching her to understand these powers that she has and how to use these powers. And so maybe Brenner is a difference, or maybe whoever's pulling Brenner's strings is different, or I don't know. You know, we also saw Elle resisting the urge to kill the cat in episode 3. But what if in the other dimension she hadn't resisted that urge? What if she had killed the cat? And that unlocked something within her. It revealed something to her, that sense of power that then caused her to desire more of that. And then it just kind of opened herself up to allowing her to be transformed or to give over to these powers and these other things and really allow them to take her down a dark path. What if she hadn't resisted the urge to kill the cat, as an example? I don't know what that decision was, if it was Elle, if it was Brenner, if it was something else. But let's just say that over in the other dimension, her powers were not limited, or the experiments were more successful. I don't know. But she got to a more powerful place, but it also took her to a darker place, and ultimately took her to a place where they couldn't contain her. And we heard them talk about Will, the way Will described it, and even the way Shepard described it. It was similar, but different. It was cold, and it was out of source, and it was dark. And, it was, we've seen, the tendrils, or the whatever those dark things are. It's not a good looking place. When we saw Barb coming out of the pool, it was similar, but dark and dirty and desolate almost. So that's all I'm saying is perhaps the Demogorgon is 11 gone bad to the extreme. The circumstances that led to that are not known. I can't really say, although I've thrown out a couple of ideas. But she got so powerful, and maybe she fed into that power that she destroyed everything. Maybe not everything like the whole world, but within a certain radius, where she's just, maybe there's such a huge energy spike. It was almost like an atomic bomb going off, and that's why things look the way they are. I don't know. But that's the desolation that we see on the other side. And if that turns out to be the case, again, going back to the heart of darkness that we talked about earlier, now you suddenly kind of have some sympathy for the Demogorgon, because we know what it could have been. We see its equivalent on this side, victim as she is. We all love Elle. We have compassion for her. We see the value in her and how she's able to do good things with her powers. And so you would have at that point what seems to be evil to us now. The Demogorgon is kind of the epitome of that. What if it's not so? Now we've got something to compare and contrast it with, and now our hearts are softened towards it. So I don't know. It's kind of a crazy theory. Like I said, your mom was like, man, you're thinking way too deep about this show. I was just watching it to enjoy it. But that's my crazy out there theory, that the Demogorgon is Elle from the other dimension. And this would also explain why Elle was able to recognize Will, and I think recognize Barb in those photos, because they are psychically linked, because they're both powerful, because they're both the same person, although completely separate, but mostly because of their power and because they are essentially the same person in different universes. They share some sort of psychic connection that maybe they don't even understand yet. And that may be really powerful down the road if they do share some sort of psychic link, because now Elle might be able to manipulate the Demogorgon or control the Demogorgon or rein in the Demogorgon, maybe something like that. I don't know. But anyway, I think that they share some sort of psychic bond, and that's why she's able to recognize things that the Demogorgon has seen, but she has not. So there you go.
Cool.
Okay. You got any other thoughts on that? I know you can't confirm or deny anything, but you have any comments?
Well, it does kind of make sense. There's one scene that would kind of not go with it, but it's, a couple episodes ahead, so I can't really say anything about it. But at the same time, it also makes perfect sense with it.
Okay. Well, we'll continue this conversation when that scene comes along.
Oh, it's not going to be for 4 more episodes.
Oh, so it's in the finale?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
A season finale, not a series finale.
Sure, of course.
Christ.
Of course. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the Duffer Brothers said they want to go on for 4 or 5 seasons.
I'd be okay with that.
I'd be okay with, never ending.
I'm just curious, the time when you have kid actors, that's the danger, right? I mean, these kids that start out at 12, if it goes on for 5 seasons, they look a whole lot different at 17.
Well, it's like Full House. Because they grew up with the show.
Yeah. But we're talking about Full House is a show that can age with the kids. This is a story so far that's trying to take place within a very confined, short amount of time, unless they stretch the story out. And some shows will do this. Falling Skies used to do this because they had kid actors. And so you'd end the season, and then 9 months later, the show comes back because they had 3-month seasons. And it would say, very first scene would say, 6 months later, just so they could kind of account for the actors themselves having aged noticeably.
Yeah, and even Gaten's voice changed so much they couldn't, do voiceovers.
Yeah, he had to be overdubbed. What do they call that?
I forgot.
I forgot too. AVR?
I think so.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay.
So I think we mentioned it in episode 0.
I think we did too. Yeah. Okay, you ready to talk about some news?
Mm-hmm.
Let's do the Hawkins report. Okay, so I'm going to take 2 of these, and Addie's going to take 1 of these.
1?
Yeah, you're going to take the Vanity Fair one.
Yeah, because I literally told Mom about this the other day.
Oh, good. Okay, perfect. So I'll get these first 2 out of the way, then I'll turn it over to Addie here. These are the same 2 we've been talking every week, but we don't want you to forget the Loot Crate for Stranger Things. It's a Stranger Things limited edition Loot Crate, valued at $111. You can get it for $70 after shipping, and you can save $5 by using our promo code, it's not a promo code, it's our affiliate link. So that's goldenspiralmedia.com/loot, and we will also earn a $5 credit. So that's awesome. And if you want to get some official Stranger Things podcast merchandise, you can go, not official Stranger Things merchandise, official podcast merchandise at goldenspiralmedia.com/shop. All right, what do you have for us, Addie?
So Winona Ryder, which we all know plays Joyce, she cried for 10 hours during the Christmas lights scene. That's crazy.
How?
I can barely cry for 30 seconds. If that.
I don't know how you have moisture left in your tear ducts after that.
Yeah. I could make the face, but no tears would come out.
Yeah,
They'd have to spray my eyes or something.
Yeah.
Or eye drops or something.
Fake tears. Which they do sometimes. We've talked about that. That's incredible. We've also talked about how good of a job she's doing.
Yeah, she's really talented.
Mm-hmm. What's the so there's a whole article here though that talks about this. What's the source on that?
This is from vanityfair.com/Hollywood/2017/06/ the stranger things Winona writer Christmas lights Emmys.
Or you can just head over to goldenspiralmedia.com/stranger things. This is episode number 4. We'll have the link there in our show notes.
You could have told me that.
It was much funner having you try to
keep that whole thing in there.
You're awesome.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah. Okay.
Not as awesome as Dustin, that's for sure.
Well, let's wrap it up with my favorite segment.
The meme of the week.
The meme of the week.
So this meme of the week, it's a picture of Joyce Byers, and she's holding the Christmas lights from episode 3 of the thing we were just talking about.
Yeah, it is.
And the caption is, "You can't even text back, but Joyce Byers' son still manages to talk to her through lights. Try again."
That's pretty accurate. I mean, although I guess if you had been kidnapped or were lost in another dimension or whatever it is, you probably would try to get a hold of your mom, but... Yeah, I can relate. There's been more than one occasion where your mom and I are both like texting, FaceTiming, calling, and you're like, "Oh, sorry, I had my phone on Do Not Disturb." And we're like, what was the whole point of buying you the phone?
So I can play on Duh.
Yeah. Punch you in the throat.
Do I need to come over there? Do I need to fight you? I will beat you up just like Hopper did to that bar dude.
Okay. I'm shaking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is good. This is a good meme. And you can also check it out over on our website. Again, goldenspiralmedia.com/stranger things. This is episode 4. So go check it out over there. And one last thing before we get out of here today. If you want to give us an iTunes review, we would love that. What that does is it helps boost us up in the rankings. And the higher you are in the rankings, more people will be able to find the show that way. And so we just think the more people that find the show, the bigger the conversation we can have, especially as it gets closer to season 2. And as we go through season 2, the more the merrier. So if you would give us an iTunes review, we would sure appreciate that. And you can just search for Stranger Things and go to podcasts within iTunes and you'll find it. Or you can simply go to goldenspiralmedia.com/ST iTunes, and that'll take you right to our iTunes listing.
Great.
All right, Addison. Been fun as always.
Mm-hmm.
Well, until next time.
Stay strange.